Wow. This is amazing.
Afraid yet resolute, I left myself no choice. My first trip to Japan could be an epic adventure or complete disaster. I decided to go for a month, totally alone.
I travelled through and explored over a dozen prefectures, from towering neon skylines to secluded forest temples and 100 things in between. From cycling up mountains to bathing in natural hot spring onsens, I was determined to do it all and have the trip of a lifetime. So this trip of a lifetime starts with an absolute nightmare. I planned this trip for an entire year, and just as I was about to go to bed to get up at 4 a.m. for my flight, I got an email from my airline saying that the flight had been cancelled. I got up the next morning, went to catch my connecting flight, trying my best to resolve it with almost no internet connection, but then my peeps helped me get the very last seat on a plane to Haneda, leaving in about 15 minutes time to get to the gate. So I got that and ran and didn't even think I would make it in time. To make things even funnier, I had this little bottle of foot powder that I was going to use just to dry myself off after the 14-hour flight. And as soon as I opened it coming out of the plane, white powder exploded everywhere. I don't know how I got through customs with this powder all over me, but it was so scary. But I took some time to calm down and regulate myself as best I could and decided that I was going to do everything I can to set out on this massive adventure. The moment I arrived in Shinjuku, I was completely overwhelmed. Immediately, I saw spots I recognized from TV shows, movies, and animes. I found my way down that famous street in Kabuchiko. What?
Freaked out at my hotel for a little bit. I wanted to do something interesting for food, but I ended up going to McDonald's. But then I went for a walk and found myself in Omiyode Yokocho. I took a risk going into one of the bars and got some amazing beer and chicken. One of the places I most wanted to go to Japan is this viewing spot in Shinjuku, and it did not let me down. For the first full day in Tokyo, I walked around Kabuchiko, Shinjuku, went to Shinjuku Park. I did some amazing yoga in the sun. I explored some of the shops, went to my first few konbinis, went on my first Yamanote line train, and found myself staying at this lovely apartment in Shinokubu. The next day I was feeling kind of sick, but I really wanted to explore Shibuya. The second you get to the station, the crossing is right in front of you. I explored the area, checking out the architecture, going into some of the futuristic stores. Walked through to Yoyogi Park, taking in all the atmosphere of a really sunny day. Continued on to Meiji Jingu, seeing my first giant torii, and the big walk down to the shrine, my first time trying the shrine etiquette. Walked through to Harajuku and Takeshita Street, which was a lot nicer than what I was led to believe. Cat Street also had its own unique atmosphere. I tried out this delicious cola at Ayoshi Cola in Shibuya. Moving into the more built-up areas, I found Shibuya Stream in this amazing laser light show. This place just felt like a cyberpunk heaven. And after sunset, went up to Shibuya Sky for some of the most amazing views I've seen in my life, including this impeccable view of Shibuya Scramble. It started raining, so I had my brolly up as I went across the scramble. Found myself in a queue outside Ichiran. I'd walked 30,000 steps that day. And I was having such an amazing time just standing there, the rain on my umbrella, the neon lights reflecting in the puddles, the sounds of the city all around me. Ichiran was such a weird experience with my own little booth. And getting a busy evening train back from Shibuya was certainly an experience. The next morning, I decided to chill, get some washing done, take a bath, but then I got bored and took a train to Ikebukuro. This place is a haven for anime and manga fans. However, it was a little bit too crowded and not really for me. So instead, I took a train back to Takadanobaba and went to the Mikado Games Arcade, one of the best retro gaming places in Tokyo or Japan. I went back to the apartment, but instead of having an early night, I decided to go street drinking and found myself in Golden Guy. I went into one of the bars and found a seat and got speaking with everyone and trying out new drinks, including a meshu. Got incredibly drunk, went to the viewing spot. As a result, I missed the last train from Shinjuku Station and had to walk all the way back to Shinokubo drunk, and I felt completely safe and so happy with the amazing experience in Tokyo. Man, I love this city so much. I really love the contrast of the train ride from Tokyo to Nikko, from this giant mega city to the rural areas where you can see the rice fields everywhere. The town of Nikko was absolutely gorgeous. I had this amazing view from my cheap hotel room. I also got to try my first public onsen, which was actually bliss rather than something to be scared of. I went into the town just after 4 p.m. and everything was already closed, apart from a few restaurants. Even at golden hour, the beautiful Shinko Bridge was empty. The World Heritage Site was closed, but you could still explore some of the grounds. The next day I was pretty sick, but still decided to go up to Chuzenji, which is like a lake in the sky. Even though it was kind of misty that day, I checked out Kegon Falls and it was still worth it. Since it was a Monday, a lot of places were closed, but I was able to take a walk to see Chuzenji Temple, which was a lot more rustic than a lot of the other temples I visited. Got this tasty katsu lovingly prepared from scratch. And the bus took us down some of the winding roads from the initial D show. I also got my first taste of a private onsen and trying on a yukata, which took about half an hour to put on. The place I was staying was just a little bit outside of Nikko itself, so I got to take this beautiful scenic walk with bridges and lakes and potentially bears. It took me to Kanmangafuchi Abyss with all the cool little Buddhas with hats. Had a wonderful nature walk that took us to the World Heritage Site with some of the most important shrines and temples in Japan. Munched up some ramen, then got this train, the Spacia X. I lucked out and managed to get the best seat in the best carriage. It had a bar, the seat was a sofa. I had this amazing view out the back of the entire train and got to view this majestic sunset before coming back briefly to Tokyo and Kanda Station. The next day I had a little bit of time and checked out the Imperial Gardens, which while not super impressive to me were still huge, before jumping on a bus to Fuji. On the bus I was admiring all the forested foothills and I saw these clouds in the distance, but one cloud that didn't move, and soon I recognized was Mount Fuji itself. As soon as I arrived at the station I was greeted by a miraculous view of Fuji. It's so much more impressive in person, so I immediately rented a bike and made my way to Churito Pagoda to enjoy an amazing sunset with a cloudless view of Fuji. In the end I stayed so long I had to cycle home in the dark.
Country roads, take me home to the place I belong.
The next day I got a bus to the Shibazakura Festival for yet another unimpeded view of Fuji with these beautiful flowers. Then I got a bus back and cycled to Fuji-Q theme park. I got lost several times along the way and even had to get let in this underground locked tunnel by someone so I could get underneath this overpass. On Fuji-Q, I really wanted to go on this ride called Ijaneka, which is just like a regular roller coaster, only the seats that you're on rotate 360 degrees. There was also the Fujiyama roller coaster that had this amazing view of Fuji from the top of the coaster. Look, I had a great time on this trip and you're seeing a lot of the highlights, but there was a lot throughout this trip that was incredibly cringe, mostly because of my own behavior. There were so many times I screwed up, right from the airport to restaurants to hotels, especially at ryokans. One of my favorites was the first roller coaster I went to on Fuji-Q. I had to go through the scanner 7 times before they'd let me on the ride. This was a super dangerous ride, so they wanted you to take everything off. So I thought I had. I took off my shoes, I took off my necklace, had to go through. Oh, I forgot to take off my belt. Had to go through again. I had a key in my pocket. I just kept having to go through again and again and getting scanned before they would let me on. And just as I'm trying to cope with how awkward this is, I get strapped in and fired off into the atmosphere at about 100 miles an hour. I got lost on my way back to Fujikawaguchiko, but then I found this wonderful traditional restaurant for some steak and beer. The next day, I decided to cycle around Lake Kawaguchiko, starting at Oike Park. I cycled across to Kabuto Ichiku Museum, which had these giant kimonos. I took a detour to Asama Shrine, which has the most grand entrance of any shrine I went to, with this giant torii and ancient cedar trees. I dropped off the bike and went for a hike up to Mother's Waterfall.
Hello. Right now I'm just casually climbing up a mountain. I thought I'd go for a little detour at Asama Shrine to go and find Mother's Waterfall. Really, I was actually trying to find a torii gate, which I think is up a different mountain, which I guess I'll climb next. But I found a waterfall and the path continued and there was another waterfall and I kept going and I kept going. And I think I'm near the top now.
And I was having so much fun, I just continued hiking up the foothills for an hour until I got lost, found a few amazing photo spots, and then spending the rest of the day just casually cycling around the lake, always having this amazing view of Mount Fuji, stopping off at little cafes and temples and shrines. Just this serene little day. Then making sure to leave the bike back before the 6 p.m. deadline. After that, I enjoyed one last night in the Fuji area with this burger and a slice of bacon thicker than I've ever seen. I woke up the next day to what would turn out to be an endless storm, got a bus to Gotemba, and then another bus to Gora Onsen, where I booked out this fabulous room with my own private onsen with real legitimate hot spring water. I had one of the best days ever. There was free beer and snacks, and just sat in the onsen most of the day, watching this storm come down. I knew an onsen day was going to be good, but I didn't realize it would be this relaxing. The next morning, unexpectedly, I was given this kaiseki breakfast. The rain had cleared, so I went back to Gora Station and got the Hakone switchback train, which was just the perfect scenic route to Hakone Yamato. I know this is a big tourist hotspot, but I only had an hour or so to spare. Visited a shrine and a waterfall, got some ice cream, got a train to Odawara, and then took my very first Shinkansen to Osaka. And it really wasn't as scary as I thought it would be. It was evening before I reached Osaka, and I was greeted by this stunning view of the city from the Umeda Sky Building. I was kind of burned out the next day, but wanted to explore Osaka, found the kind of Showa district with Sutenkaku Tower. It wasn't really my vibe, but it was fun to visit. I explored Namba and Denden Town for gaming and anime merch. Also looking for a suitcase for my growing inventory of souvenirs. Tried some okonomiyaki, and then visited Dotonbori to check out the Glyco sign, although the area was incredibly busy.
So something I noticed putting this video together, I was there for 30 days, but I don't have a lot of photo or video footage. It was really important for me experiencing these things for the first time to just be there and to take in the moment. And probably there was as many cool things happened that aren't in this video that did happen, that if I would have taken out my camera, I would have missed the moment.
I decided to go to the Osaka World Expo the next day, but when I got there, the reviews said it was a queue simulator. There were thousands of people standing in the exposed sun and decided not to bother. Had a chill day and decided to go to the aquarium instead. And this place was amazing. It had turtles and seals and jellyfish and crabs. Before returning to my apartment for an early night for the train the next morning, only to be awoken at 2 a.m. by fire engines blaring. I woke up a total zombie and got the Shinkansen to Himeji. I love how you could see the castle from the station. I arrived just as it was opening and got to explore the entire grounds and the castle itself. It was a truly awe-inspiring piece of architecture, and beside it was Kokoen Gardens, which are exactly the kind of gardens I imagine in my Japanese fantasies. After that, continued on the Shinkansen to Onomichi. It was at this point I really felt like I was getting out of the tourist areas. Walking through Onomichi is an adventure on its own. I walked down this street with a pretty open train track. Seeing the trains just roll through the city was unbelievable. I took the ropeway up to the observation deck for this insane view. There was this wonderful nature walk down with shrines, and then I went off the beaten path and found Tamangu Shrine, which seemed as though it had been untouched for decades. Before filling myself up and resting at the Seaview Hotel before 2 days of cycling. The Shimanami Kaido was easily the best cycle of my life. What I had planned was a 9-island adventure, about 150 kilometers over 2 days. I was so excited for this, probably more than anything on the trip, to see if I could actually do it. I get up early, I have a bike booked that I can drop off in Imabari when I'm finished. I get some supplies, make my way to the boat. At the start, the first few miles of the Kaido aren't really that exciting at all, and I was feeling kind of let down. But then it opened up and you could see the Seto Inland Sea, and it was absolutely gorgeous. It was indescribable. I took a detour, cycling up some hills while avoiding a bunch of crabs just chilling out on the road, to find this beach with a torii gate near the sea and no one else around. I finally got back onto the main path and went over one of the first giant suspension bridges, which was kind of scary looking off the side. I cycled up to this lighthouse. It wasn't particularly interesting, but I had my own personal bamboo forest and found these 2 abandoned pristine beaches with only my own footprints.
My very own beach. How amazing is this? This is so cool.
There was lots of scary bugs and lizards everywhere. I had all kinds of delicious ice cream and daifuku and met lots of new friends along the way. There was just a simple joy to cycling in and around the Seto Inland Sea. I cycled through a number of villages and industrial towns, and these joyful konbini shops just looking around. I visited Kusanji Temple, which I think is my favorite temple in Japan, even if it is quite new. The temple itself, the pagodas, underneath was the cave of 1,000 Buddhas, with 1,000 Buddhas literally etched into the stone. There was the Hill of Hope, this marble area that looked as though you had ascended to heaven. I went and chilled out on Satoda Sunset Beach and saw this humongous spider that was terrifying. I cycled over a bunch more crazy bridges and stopped at the cyclist sanctuary. Even though the day is just mostly cycling, there's so many beautiful things to see, especially on a clear day, and going over each bridge has a different kind of atmosphere to it that is so enjoyable. I had my first trip to a Japanese supermarket before returning to this renovated Showa-era guest house I had all to myself. Everything felt so authentic that it was actually kind of scary at night with all the creaking and the empty tatami rooms. But it was so surreal and so cool to get to use one of these real 60s baths and to sit in the tatami room and to watch TV under the kotetsu. The next day I was in a ton of pain, but I continued cycling. I visited Oyamazumi Shrine, which has easily got the best museum in all of Japan. It features swords and armor that were actually used in battle. Plus it has a 2,000+ year old cedar tree and a random maritime museum. On the second day of the Shimanami Kaido, there's not as many places to stop, but the views alone are worth every single moment. My main physical challenge for this trip was to climb Mount Kiro to get this amazing view of 3 suspension bridges that I would have to cycle over later, one of the longest bridges in the world. This was a 30-minute cycle up 10 to 15 degree inclines the entire way.
Here we go. Uphill. Already the views are fantastic, but the hills are bullshit. So here's why I'm coming up here. I'm not even at the top yet, but here's some of the view. Oh my God. I did it.
I was exhausted by the time I reached the top, but I'm pretty sure these are the best views I've seen in my entire life. In terms of solo travel, I can't say there was an entire second in this journey that I felt in any way threatened by a human being. A few times I was worried about bears, but people in the most part were absolutely lovely. Don't get me wrong, I met some buttheads, I got some weird looks, that's totally fine, normal and expected, but most of the time people were just so kind and so gracious. And even without Japanese, you can still have great conversations with people, maybe if you're squished all together in an izakaya. Heck, even when I cycled to the top of Mount Kiro-san, there was these 3 grannies cheering me on at the end, and they were starting a conversation with me, and I had no idea what they were saying. I was like, oh, so des. I didn't know what to say, but the conversation still continued. We were still smiling, we were still laughing, we still said goodbye to each other, and just those little moments are what makes it. And also as a solo traveler, a real BAM can be when you get into a conversation with another solo traveler because they have their own experience of Japan. They can tell you some stories, they can give you some hints and places to go. I wouldn't have made it to the Flower Festival in Fuji if I hadn't asked for some tips from some people in the izakaya in Golden Gai. And those are the kinds of cool links and memories that you can get just by opening up and seeing what happens. I also got a photo with the local mascot, Mikian. I cycled down, went across those giant bridges, and made my way to Imabari. Left off my bike, then just about missed this single carriage local train to Matsuyama. Waiting for me in Matsuyama was a ryokan in the Gora Onsen area, where I was able to rest my muscles in this ancient hot spring water. I explored the city a little bit that night, but the real exploration was the next morning.
So I'm just chilling out in Matsuyama. I got some chicken, I got some fish, I got some beer, I got something called a mango sour. I think because I've cycled so much over the past few days, I'm actually pretty drunk.
I found one of the onsens that inspired Miyazaki for Spirited Away. I made a fool of myself taking the tram, took a ropeway up to Matsuyama Castle, which looked so eerie in the mist. This castle definitely had my favorite views from the top. with the entire city and surrounding lands completely visible. Then I picked up my bags from the tacky bin and made the grueling journey towards Kobe.
Too many bags. Too much stuff.
Traveling east across Shikoku to Okayama and then getting a Shinkansen to Kobe. I booked the express train because it had a toilet, but what I didn't expect was the only toilet would be a squat toilet, which is very interesting on a moving train. Kobe was really just about chilling for a weekend before the next part of the journey, so it was just exploring the city. There was a really great energy around Sanomiya. I booked out one of those fancy Kobe beef restaurants, and as much as I paid £100 for a number of small courses, the beef itself was worth the money on its own. It was unbelievable. I didn't take a lot of pictures or videos of the food I ate in Japan because I was too busy enjoying it, but the rumors really are true. Japan is amazing for food. If you just go on to Google or go on to Tabelog, you can find places to eat almost anywhere. I had a nice night just street drinking around the city, checking out some of the games arcades and restaurants. And after a couple of chill days, I took a bus to Arima Onsen. This was such a lovely little town with its little rivers and glorious little shopping districts. I took an impromptu trip on the Rocco ropeway up to Rocco Mountain, and I'm so glad I did because from the top was one of the most amazing views I've ever seen. You can see over 50 kilometers away to the skyscrapers past Kobe back into Osaka. Back in Arima, I explored some more, including Tosen Shrine, before heading off to another ryokan. I got this classy room to myself, including yet another genuine hot springs onsen, and was blessed with this incredible purple and orange sunset. In the morning, I had another dip and then explored Arima when it was more lively. It has lots of cute little shops for trinkets and little bits of street food. This was another big travel day. I had to get a bus to Shinosaka, then I took the green car Shinkansen to Suruga, and then another Shinkansen to Kanazawa. Kanazawa as a city had such a cool vibe. Kanazawa really is the most quiet, chill city I've ever been to in my life. I've been walking through the city for hours and I've barely seen any people. I rented out this Machiya townhouse. It had all the tatami rooms, a kotatsu, and had this wonderful garden out the back. I took a beautiful sunny walk the next morning to the samurai district and got to explore it before the crowds came along, exploring the walls, private gardens, little museums and trinket shops. Then a scenic city walk to the Higashi Chaya district, which is sometimes known as Little Kyoto. It's very empty the day I went to it, but very aesthetic, with a cool ninja museum and some cute cafes. Even with a lot of steps under my belt, I walked to Kanazawa Castle, which while not as striking as some other castles, was still wonderful to walk around. However, it was the castle gardens that were the main attraction. These gardens were pristine and teeming with wildlife from turtles to jumping fish. It had lakes and ancient trees. Afterwards, I found a local teishoku restaurant and had one of the most delicious meals of my life. And really just reveling in the gratitude of everything that I've seen so far on this trip. The next morning, I took a bus to Shirakawa-go, a World Heritage Site and historical Japanese village. The bus there was one of the most jaw-dropping journeys I'd been on. The village itself felt as picturesque as it looks, from the observation spot to actually inside some of the little huts that feature museums and traditional architecture. It's such a serene area. Waterways with koi, beautiful bridges, and lots of delicious food and souvenirs, before enjoying one final night in the Machiya townhouse. Next, I'm taking a Shinkansen to Nagano and seeing the snow-capped mountains in the distance. The city itself is quiet, but I don't hang around and get a bus up the mountain to see the snow monkeys. There's a lovely little hike up, and as much as I was told there may not be monkeys in June, I was really surprised to see hundreds of monkeys all over the place. They weren't so much hanging out in the onsen as they were playing around. These monkeys weren't afraid to get up close, and you could even see the tiny little baby monkeys on their mother's backs. Once I got over my nerves and realized the monkeys were no threat, I just spent the rest of the time in awe watching these confident, silly monkeys just having fun. Back in Nagano, I was kind of exhausted and didn't really explore the city that much, spending almost an entire day at the hotel just trying to build my energy up. For the next day, taking a train to what I think was the happiest city in Japan, Matsumoto. I just loved the vibe of this place, from the cafes to the shopping districts. It weirdly felt like a coastal town, even though it was really far inland. There's lots of lovely side streets and alleys to explore, but my favorite was Matsumoto Castle. And whilst it probably has the least impressive view from the top, the actual area surrounding the castle and some of the photo spots were unreal, including the cool as heck Black Castle itself. Afterwards, I searched quite a few places to find an open unagi restaurant. It was absolutely delicious and so worth trying. I found this street that was just desserts and bakery goods, so I loaded up and made my way back to Nagano before taking one last day trip the next day to a place called Togakushi. And the bus we were on drove uphill for about an hour, and by the time we were at the top, you could really feel the mountain air. And I'm pretty sure this was my favorite nature spot in Japan. The path towards the upper Togakushi shrine has these inconceivably large cedar trees lining both sides of the path. The trek up is tiring, and the shrine isn't really amazing, but the feeling of the pilgrimage is. There's some side paths with risks of bears.
Hey bear! Hey bear! Kuma, kuma, kuma!
So much of what is seen in Japan is beyond description, beyond photos, beyond videos. I've seen the photos and videos of so many of these places that I have visited, and they do absolutely no justice to the reality of how huge and amazing everything is. Oh my God, I just see a big old, oh my God. This is what I'm talking about. You're just walking along in Japan. I did not know this was here, and yet it's here. You just have lovely little streams. And here we're gonna go through a whole bunch of tour gates. There are so many places in Japan where there's giant queues and people are trying to find ways to get good photos, to get good videos walking through one of these. But when you come out into the nowhere zone, you get these amazing opportunities that are absolutely unbelievable. Shrine. Customary bow. I've really enjoyed going to the shrines, bowing, doing the prayers, doing the purifications. It seems to have brought me great luck on this trip because so much more has gone right than has gone wrong on a month-long trip. I didn't expect things to work out as well as they did. And it's because Japan is such an amazingly efficient country. Even out here in the middle of nowhere, it's magic. This has been the most magical experience I've ever had in my life. As much as I am ready to go home, I don't want it to end. But wow, gratitude is the word. I'm just so happy to be here. And then made my way to Mirror Lake, which really lives up to the name. Then I took a trek to the middle and lower shrines in the little village of Togakushi itself, trying to find anywhere I could get out of the sun and get some food. When I finally got the bus back to Nagano, I immediately grabbed my bags and then jumped on a Shinkansen to back to Tokyo. This time I stayed in the east side of Tokyo in Asakusa. It's definitely a part of the city that's more fun in the evenings. I really enjoyed Sensoji Temple in the evening because it was all lit up and there was a lot less tourists there. There's so many awesome little eateries to get sushi and ramen. It's really pleasant just to walk through. There's also a Don Quixote that I spent way too much money in. On one of the days, I took a walk to Ueno. There was amazing views and some wonderful shopping streets. I also stopped back at Kababashi Street to buy a knife and some ceramics. On one of the days, I took a train to Akihabara, which was much better than expected. I explored Yodobashi Camera, went around all the different little shops selling anime and video game merch. Went into the Geigo building and played My Deluxe and a whole bunch of classic arcade games, which was kind of a dream come true. Back in Asakusa for the last night, I walked up and down the Sumida River, just filled with gratitude for this big adventure.
So, you ever watch those JTubers who go about and live stream in Tokyo, around Japan, eating, drinking, going to izakayas, checking out different places? You know, you can do that yourself, right? I've just been around a couple of different places. I'm exploring Asakusa and just having fun. I think I watched a lot of those channels thinking, no, that wouldn't be possible for me, but actually, it is possible for me. It's possible for anyone. And it's a lot of fun to do.
On the final day, after the drama of packing all my bags, I took a trip to Nipponbashi, but there was nothing there. So I took another trip to Daimon Station for a spontaneous trip to Tokyo Tower. I'm so glad I went to Tokyo Tower. It wasn't on the list of things to do, but it's a remarkable structure and the views from the top are unbelievable. And then I jumped on one last train to the airport and had to wave goodbye to Japan. The idea of solo traveling to me was one of the most terrifying things I could imagine in my teens, 20s, and early 30s. I didn't have a lot of experience traveling even with family growing up, so the idea of going to another country even with people, let alone by myself, it just didn't seem possible. And I started to get my life together in my 30s and make a little bit of money. I decided I really want to put this to bed. So I spent a few days in Amsterdam by myself and that went fine. I thought, I want to take this further. I'm going to turn 40 pretty soon and I've never been to Japan and I've always wanted to go to Japan. And I thought, I'm going to do it before I'm 40. And if no one's going to come with me, I'm going to go by myself. And I couldn't really expect anyone else to make the kind of financial and time commitment that I wanted to make. So I made the decision to book 1 month in Japan by myself. The second I booked that flight, I was locked in. This was going to happen. I had no belief that it was going to happen. I thought I would back out at any time, but I kept giving myself ways and reasons to not back out. Even until the last day, I was scared of what was going to happen, but to be honest, almost none of those fears were realized. So in this video, as much as I had a brief bit of anxiety in the first few days, the entire rest of the trip, it just melted away as I was just totally living in the presence and moment of all these places in Japan that I've only ever seen in these fantastical videos, in animes, in film and Japanese drama, thinking that could never happen. But just being there, feeling safe in Japan's culture, being able to just explore has really changed me in so many ways. I have so much more confidence now, so much more belief in myself because I was able to do something so difficult. I'm able to feel more comfortable and at home in the country that I live. I'm able to be that butthead who talks about going on a 30-day trip to Japan by themselves. And people are always like, wow, that's crazy. Like, how are you even doing that? How did you even do that? It's like, I don't know. But if I don't know and I did it, then I believe anyone else can do it. And this video isn't really a testament to what I've done, it's a testament to what anyone can do if they really put their mind to it and just push themselves that little bit further. Thanks so much for checking out this video. If you're thinking about going to Japan solo by yourself, I can't recommend it enough. So just take the pressure off, make your plans, get your stuff booked, and go have an amazing time.